Okay, so as people are coming on in, I want to introduce you to my guest. Jena Griswold is Colorado's 39th Secretary of State and a leader who has been fighting Donald Trump on the election front since 2018. She is currently running for Colorado Attorney General in the 2026 Democratic primary, where she is the front runner against three opponents. She has been endorsed by Colorado's labor and educators unions, Emily's List, the Jane Fonda Climate PAC, and by current and former members of the U.S. House, including Representative Jamie Raskin, and over 100 Colorado leaders. Her campaign platform for Attorney General centers on protecting rights and freedoms, standing up to ICE, fighting for justice, and safeguarding Colorado's land, air, and water. She was born in Toledo, Ohio. She moved to Estes Park, Colorado at age 10 and grew up in a working class household that relied on food stamps at times to get by. She was the first person in her family to attend a four-year college, Whitman College, where she graduated magna cum laude, and then law school at the University of Pennsylvania. Before running for office, Jena Griswold practiced international anti-corruption law and worked as a voter protection attorney for the Obama campaign. In 2018, at age 33, she became the youngest elected Secretary of State in the United States and the first Democrat to hold the office in Colorado since 1958. She was reelected in 2022 and she's now term limited. Secretary Griswold made national headlines for leading the effort to remove Donald Trump from Colorado's 2024 presidential ballot. She's been a vocal defender of election integrity, mail-in voting, and democratic institutions throughout her tenure. Please hit the heart and welcome Secretary of State Jena Griswold. Jena, I've known you since 2018 when you first ran for Secretary of State. And I lived for some years in a small cabin right over the mountain from where you were raised. You share about growing up near Estes Park. It's a small mountain town. You were in a working class family, sometimes food stamps. What did growing up that way teach you about fighting?
Oh, well, first off, thanks for having me. It's always lovely to join all of you. So thank you. And that's right. I grew up in the canyon between Drake and Estes Park. We grew up literally in a cabin with an outhouse outside, sometimes on food stamps, going to a food bank. And I'm first in my family to attend a four-year college and then law school. And actually, I still have over $200,000 in student debt. So I think there's a couple things that it taught me. Number one, I know like politicians want to talk about values and community values, but it's true. When you grow up in a small town, you really learn that you rely on your neighbors. They are your family, and that's who you live with. So helping one another is something that I really value. You know, part of the reason that I've been really focused on public service in my career is I really take it to heart that the Estes Park Food Bank was there for my family. And then the Rotary Club was there, the scholarships to be first in my family to go to college. It was the local community helping each other out. And it instilled in me a desire to give back. But I would also say, you know, I started working the summer after seventh grade and saw that a lot of families were like mine. They were struggling, they were paycheck to paycheck. So when I say the system is rigged, it's not a talking point. I've lived it. There are two Colorados, one for the wealthy and one for everybody else. The cost of essentials, food, rent, healthcare, childcare, utilities are getting harder and harder, if not out of reach for a lot of families. And I think, frankly, that the situation is dangerous for our economy and for our society. And the next attorney general is going to have to do their part to tackle the affordability crisis head on. You know, another thing that I vividly understand is the dangerous effects of climate change. In 2013, Estes Park and many other cities in that area faced historic flooding. It was personally very scary for me. We were out of touch with my mom for days. We didn't know what was happening. And then we've seen the floods, the fires over and over and over again. and it really cements the need to tackle our evolving climate change and enforce our climate laws. Growing up how I did, Colorado's environment, our open spaces, our wild spaces, our water are really close to my heart. And that's something that I think both you and I share, Sandy.
Yeah, it is. And I was directly affected by that flood too in our community. It was cut off from all civilization. The
Yeah.
highway just was dropped away from the cliff walls and no one could get in or out except by
Yeah.
helicopter. So
You,
we'll talk
you were in
about that some other
Pinewood.
time.
You were in
Huh?
Pinewood,
Yeah,
Sandy?
Pinewood.
Okay. So, yeah,
So
just
I
Highway
have some
7.
questions on water, land, and air,
Okay.
but first I want to ask you, from Secretary of State to Attorney General, why this office? Why now? As Secretary of State, you've had a more national profile than most. Why trade that for the Colorado AG's office? You could go anywhere.
Well, you're very sweet to say that, but ultimately, I'm concerned for our democracy. I'm concerned about the rule of law. And I'm running for Attorney General because Colorado needs a strong, proven leader in this critical moment. I've stood up to Donald Trump to protect our rights and our freedoms. I've stood up to extremists, and I'm not going to back down now when our democracy needs defenders. I'm running for Attorney General to protect our rights, our states, our freedom, the Colorado way of life, to stand up for working people like the families I grew up with, to make sure that they have a champion in office, to stand up to corporate special interests, and the corruption that we are seeing really just skyrocket over the last several years. And again, to protect our air, water, and lands. Something that I also am really passionate about is making sure that we have champions for women. We've had a rape kit backlog, months and months backlog to test sexual assault kits. We need to make sure that there's true justice, prioritize supporting victims, gun violence prevention. I'm really passionate about getting a stronger assault weapons ban passed. And ultimately, the next attorney general will have to be the first line of defense against Donald Trump and his administration. And more than ever, we're going to need someone brave enough and strong enough to hold the line. I have a proven track record of standing up to Trump and MAGA extremists over the past 7 years. And as attorney general, I'm going to continue that fight and never back down.
That's why I wanted to talk to you about this. And that's why I asked you that
Mhm.
question. You are a proven fighter. And with your national profile, you could have gone to TV announcer, anchor at a network, but you've stayed and you've fought for Colorado. And we really love you for that. I want to say to the audience that our Democracy Collective team members are going to be putting links and calls to action in the chat. We've got Jena's campaign website where you can volunteer to help out or donate or host an event. We've got a website that has facts about her. So look at the links that the team posts in the chat. And thank you for coming. Keep hitting the heart. We love you guys. We're so glad to have you. So let's talk about standing up for Coloradans against Trump. Trump just signed an executive order going after mail-in voting. Colorado runs its elections on mail ballots. Walk us through what happens if the federal government tries to force Colorado to change.
Well, I think first off, Trump did issue an executive order on mail ballots. And an overview of that executive order is he wants the federal government to determine who gets to use a mail ballot and who doesn't. So he asked DHS, other agencies within the federal government to make a list, send it to states 60 days before an election, and that would be an approved list. And then the order tells the Postal Service they can only deliver to qualified people on the list, and then directs the DOJ to go after election officials who send ballots to people that they do not deem worthy. But I think the big picture is twofold. Number one, this is illegal. It's unconstitutional. It will likely get enjoined or struck down. Colorado has joined the multi-state lawsuit to push back. And frankly, Sandy, I think it's going to be okay. I really do. Trump's first executive order on elections about a year ago, or more than a year at this point, that has largely been enjoined. Just because he signs an executive order does not mean it's legal. It does not mean it's constitutional. And, you know, putting on the campaign hat for a minute, I've been proud as Secretary of State to fight back against some of these really big democracy issues. I'm going to be very excited as Attorney General to join the legal fight to make sure our state is continuing to hold the line. But I think that the big picture is that, you know, Trump is doing more than just this executive order, and we can get into that, all the ways they're trying to undermine the elections. But the big picture is that even if, or even when I should say, this executive order is stopped, it gives MAGA ammunition, something to point to if they do not win big in 2026. So they can point to their own chaos as justification to continue their lies and misinformation about our elections, with it, which in itself is dangerous. So what I can guarantee is we're going to fight like hell to make sure that every Republican, Democrat, unaffiliated, every eligible voter is able to make their voices heard. I do believe we're going to have good elections. But we also have to push back on these really undemocratic tendencies we are seeing from the Trump administration. Let's call it what it is. This is an attempted power grab, and it requires everybody being very vocal, organizing, and pushing back.
Yeah, and I mean, I think people need to start getting vocal in the primary. They need to choose a leader who will fight against the Trump administration. There's an interesting comment in the chat from Lisa Miles. Win this election, then in 8 years be our first woman governor. What do you think about that?
Well, that is, who said that?
Lisa Miles.
Well, that's very
Lisa.
sweet of you, Lisa. You know, I was the first Democratic woman Secretary of State. When we win this, I will be the first Democratic woman Attorney General. It's an honor to be in these positions. I am just totally focused on that AG role. But I do think that, you know, we have a problem in Colorado politics where we have not had a woman break the glass ceiling of U.S. Senate or of the gubernatorial position. I think it's a shame. So, you know, hopefully we have a woman break that glass ceiling at some point. I do think that the perspective of the lived perspective of 50% of the society is important to have in a state. We are, I believe, one of only 4 states that have not had one of those positions under a woman's leadership. And I think, you know, to an extent, it's going to just having diverse perspectives is really important, right? My lived experience is going to be a little different than other people, in part because I'm a woman, in part because I grew up poor in the mountains, right? There's all these different layers of an identity. But I'll tell you, you know, the fight, the rollback on women's rights when it comes to abortion access, it's going to feel a little different to me than perhaps an older man in the position. And I'm going to fight like hell to protect birth control, IVF, abortion access. I think we are seeing the rollback in women's freedoms tremendously in this country in a really scary way. You know, I have Mario, my husband, and I, we have an almost 22-month-old little boy. And we were so happy to be pregnant, to have him. I actually was pregnant a little later in life. So I was, when I gave birth, a month away from my 40th birthday. And we were so overjoyed. We did have access to fertility treatment, which was really lucky. And by the way, Colorado State Senator, who is now passed away, Faith Winter, ran a bill to make sure that Colorado women have access to IVF covered under our health insurance. That's women's leadership, thinking about, you know, the specific things that women may need. But anyhow, we were so overjoyed to have be pregnant, to have the baby. But being pregnant in Trump's America can be really scary. If you're in the wrong state and something goes wrong with your pregnancy, it could mean your health, it could mean your life. So I know I'm going on a tangent, but I truly believe in women's leadership, diverse leadership, people from all different communities and backgrounds having a seat at the table. Empathy is so important. We should all really focus on trying to be empathetic, but having people with different backgrounds, different lived experiences, I think is crucial to democracy.
While we're on the subject of empathy, let's talk about some things a state AG might be able to do. Let's talk about ICE in Colorado. ICE
Yeah.
arrested over 3,500 people in Colorado last year, including babies and the elderly. As Attorney General, what legal tools do you have to protect Colorado families?
Yeah, we are seeing ICE terrorize the country and communities, and we really have to put an end to the lawlessness. This is really personal to me. Some of you know my husband; he's Latino, our baby's Latino, and we are seeing racial profiling. But not just. It should be scary to everybody. At the end of the day, the two people killed in Minnesota, a mom and an ICU nurse, were not Latino, and we're seeing a level of lawlessness. So, as Attorney General, I will absolutely prosecute any ICE or federal agent that commits a crime in the state of Colorado. The Constitution does not disappear just because someone has a badge. They do not have immunity for committing crimes, and I will absolutely hold them accountable. There's several apparatuses under Colorado law. Colorado law is very clear. On top of prosecuting potential crimes, Colorado law is very clear that the state, local actors, county actors cannot be cooperating with ICE in most situations. The Attorney General is the person who will enforce that law, and I will absolutely enforce that law. We are seeing, a fight in the state legislature about civil rights lawsuits, whether there's federal immunity, whether that's chipped away at, whether Coloradans who have their civil rights impinged on can bring their own lawsuits. I am absolutely in favor of making sure that Coloradans are in the position to protect their rights at the end of the day. And I think there's various ways that we probably won't get to here that an attorney general can make sure that we're protecting Colorado residents. But on an issue that, God forbid it would happen, if you do see a situation like we saw in Minnesota, where there is a potential crime committed, lives are hurt, lives are lost. We unfortunately cannot trust the federal government at this point to properly and transparently investigate shootings or excessive force complaints. And as Attorney General, I'll do everything in my power to make sure that there are fair investigations, independent investigations for true accountability.
Wow, you're just anticipating my questions and answering
Oh,
them before
okay.
I can. I know you will
Okay.
aggressively push for Coloradans' rights, and we need attorneys general to do this. I mean, they were reluctant to do this in Minnesota, and the delay caused a lot of problems because the feds were able to come in and impound cars and things like that and prohibit the locals from seeing the evidence they needed to prosecute. So I'm just delighted to hear that. We just have a little bit of time left. I want to tell the audience how much I'm enjoying your comments in the chat and that you're hitting the heart. We hope you're visiting Jena's website, and we hope you're visiting Our Democracy Collective on YouTube and on Substack too. And Jena, let's turn to water,
Okay.
specifically the Colorado River. You know me, I ask you this every time you're in public, and I ask every politician this. The Colorado River Agreement expires this year, and the states cannot agree. The feds might impose their own plan. What does a Colorado AG do in that fight?
Yeah, that's top of mind, right? And before we
Right.
dive into jump into water, pun. Just to go back to the situation in Minnesota. These are very tough situations, and I think the Attorney General Ellison, really leaned into a leadership role and filed lawsuits, some of which were unsuccessful, to try to get ICE out of Minnesota. It's worth mentioning that within hours of the killing of Alex Preddy, the ICU nurse there, the DOJ sent a letter or a request to Minnesota leadership, basically saying, if you want ICE out, give us access to your voter data. So
Yeah.
we are seeing ICE used as a tool to impinge on people's civil rights. And I think it's really dangerous, and we have to fight back. Now, when it comes to our climate in general, It is related to what we're seeing at the federal level. The EPA is largely being gutted. And I am really proud that Colorado is a national leader in tackling the climate crisis, but our current laws, they're just not enough. Our current enforcement is not enough. So I think there's a couple ways the Attorney General can really lean in. First, to fight to ensure that consumers are not shouldering the burden of new infrastructure. We do need to be investing in more clean energy to keep the bills down and help our environment. So that means if new infrastructure is put in, the cost should not go on the backs of consumers. And we need to make sure that AI data centers, for example, pay their own way, that you all are not covering those costs. But we also see that very often massive corporate polluters like Suncor, for example, get off with small fines. Suncor is one of the leading corporate polluters, and they just pay a fraction of their profits in terms of fines. They have routinely violated air quality standards. And addressing corporate polluters and protecting our climate will absolutely be one of my top priorities. It has to be. The entire state is going to have to lean in because, again, that federal partnership is eroded. It is no longer there. So I'm really excited about that. Now, when it comes to water, thank God there's a little bit of snow and a little bit of rain. Did you guys get some snow, Sandy?
Yeah, 8 inches of snow where I live.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot. That's great.
Yeah.
But we are going through, or just went through, one of the driest winters in history. We are facing a drought. There has been retribution from the Trump administration on water projects, on resources to make sure that we have the tools to get through this type of drought. And, at the end of the day, we will likely have a high fire risk this summer. Demand for water is also growing pretty intense across the state and across the West. And to your point, the West has not come to an agreement on water usage.
Yeah.
I believe environmental protections and water rights go hand in hand. Healthy rivers, wetlands, and aquifers strengthen agriculture, recreation, and municipal supply. So, at the end of the day, we must insist on fairness in negotiations. This is a headwater reality. Those have to be respected. And at the end of the day, I sure hope a negotiation is able to be reached, a compromise is able to be reached. Ultimately, it's in everybody's best interest. But as Attorney General, if faced with these challenges, I am going to fully protect Colorado and enforce our laws. There's another water fight that's with Nebraska, different issue. But again, really, really look forward to protecting Colorado and our way of life.
You mentioned wetlands and forests and so on. One of our U.S. senators from Colorado, Hickenlooper, is a major sponsor of the Fix Our Forests Act, which is environmentally unsound. And as a former wildland firefighter, I can tell you it does not mitigate wildfires at all. In fact, it increases the possibility of it because it limits the amount of diversity of trees and plant life. So you can just have one kind of tree that will just catch fire, and you'll have what happens when there's a wind-driven fire on meadowlands in the forest. Colorado has 7 national forests within its boundaries. You talked about protecting our natural resources. What can the AG's office do to help when there's these kind of bills at the federal level?
Well, when there's bills at the federal level, really the role is just advocating and sharing facts as we know them. So, for example, we're in semi-regular communication with the federal delegation on a lot of the voting bills as Secretary of State. When we were seeing the push for HR 1 to do major voting rights and campaign finance changes, we were in communication to make sure that the delegation was aware of exactly how things worked here. And what we could see the future, how we could imagine a better future. So I think it's largely along those lines, making sure that the states interests are, how programs are ran at the state are fully understood at the federal level. Ultimately, no state actor gets a vote in Congress or in the U.S. Senate, but hopefully we're all rowing in the same direction most of the time.
You know, I'm really sad that we only have a few minutes left because there's so much more we could talk about. We'll just have to have you back again between the primary and the midterms. But I have a big question for you, and I want you to take your time to answer it
Okay.
because I think this is the kind of question that people want to know the answer to.
Okay.
When you are fighting in court to protect Colorado's water or fighting the feds for funds they owe us, or defending a woman's right to emergency pregnancy care, or standing between ICE and a family in a mountain town, do you still see that hardworking kid in the mountains near Estes Park whose family couldn't always count on a nutritious dinner?
Oh, a sweet a sweet question, Sandy. Um, you know, I'm a Democrat, honestly, because I believe Democrats should fight for freedom, for justice, and for working people. And that's kind of it. You know, I, to an extent, I will tell you, growing up how I did, I had to fight for everything. Uh, but I thought it to an extent that it was normal when I was younger. I just thought like that's how things were. Um, and it really formed, I think, the core of who I am. For better or worse, I have a lot of grit. I believe that you can just workhorse a problem to a solution. I am optimistic. I just think you can find solutions if you work hard enough. And I would say how I grew up, it affects my entire worldview and how I am as a person. So absolutely. And I think some people, when they grow up blue collar, and then, there's different ways people can take that experience. Sometimes people just want to push it down and forget their childhood. I really fully embrace it because I know, when I think about, the illegal raids that may be happening, those are the people I worked with when I was in middle school and high school. When I think about illegal corporate greed and people struggling to pay their bills, possibly getting evicted, I think about my dad. So the answer to that question, I think, is yes. I would also underline the Attorney General is not fighting any of these fights alone. Secretary of State is not fighting any of these fights alone. Luckily, you build really good teams and you work together in a team environment. The Attorney General's office is really big. It has over 700 employees. We may be talking about the splashiest or the scariest of topics. The AG's office is advising state agencies on all issues all the time. They're working on all different topics, and we are so lucky in Colorado that we have some of the best attorneys in the state, if not the nation, serving in that office. So I look forward to leading that office and continuing to lead the state, to be on the right side of history, whether it's for a family whose parents are, fighting the fight of wage theft. I look forward to staffing up an office on workers' rights. So attorneys in the AG's office are fighting for everyday people, or whether it's the big fight for our democracy, for trying to stop the would-be fascist takeover of this country. It's an honor to be in these positions, and I am really looking forward to working with the entire team at the AG's office.
What a great answer to the question. I just have one more real quick one
Sure.
that I
Sure.
want to say to the people. You can support people-powered campaigns like Jena's, and they need our support. We want to support them rather than have the billionaires buy them. And that means that we have to give a little. So, Jena, what can people do to help you out in this campaign, to help you stand up and be the people's lawyer?
Well, thank you for ending on that question. I flipped the Secretary of State seat for the first time in 60 years. I am not only was the youngest elected Secretary of State. I continue to be the youngest Secretary of State in the country for the last 7 years at this point. You guys know we've talked a lot about how I grew up, and running statewide it's tough. It takes a lot of money. We're really proud to have the lowest average contribution amount. So that means at the end of the day, we are building a grassroots campaign across the state of Colorado. If you're able to chip in 5, 15, $50 or more, it all adds up. It's super helpful. If you're able to volunteer, please let us know.
Yes.
But then I would say to take a step back, I think we're going to win this larger fight for our democracy. And I see it in a 3-tier pathway. Number one, file the lawsuits to stop the Trump administration from their illegality. Democratic AGs are largely winning. I'm really excited to be in the fight. Number two, it's organizing. It's making sure that the No Kings rallies are successful, that groups like Sandi and Tracy and a lot of people on this chat, on this subtrack are leading, that you guys continue to engage. It's making sure that Coloradans stay in the fight. Number three is just the raw politics. We have to win races. We have to win races in 26. So if you are able to help my campaign, I would very much appreciate it. But I appreciate everything that you all do every single day.
Well, we appreciate having you, and will you come back after you win the primary?
Absolutely.
And let's talk about what we can do moving forward toward November.
Absolutely.
Jena,
Absolutely.
it's been a pleasure having you. Everyone, look for Our Democracy Collective on Substack and on YouTube. Find out what our nonprofit is doing. We have 14 interns we're teaching media skills to. We're trying to do good work to create hope and change, just like our guest, Secretary Jena Griswold. Thank you, Jena. Thank you, everyone. It was so great to have you here. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye. Thank you, guys.